Brian McGinnis here, along with Nicole Shimoni and Brian Travis, calling the Finance and Revenue Committee meeting to order on Wednesday, January the 11th, 2025 at 5:31. Are there any announcements? Seeing none, any comments, suggestions, petitions by residents in attendance regarding items not on the agenda? Seeing none, let's go to the director's report. Ms. Barb Leonti, thank you.
Good evening. Is this on? Do I have to press anything? Okay, we're good. If we could start with page 2 of the report, please. Looking at the cash position report as of May 31st, 2025, we started the month with $27,827,470 in cash. We booked receipts of $6,650,075. We spent $6,563,804, and this left us with an ending cash balance of $27,913,741 among all funds. I just wanted to point 3 things out to you on page 1. So if we could go back to that page, please. At the top section, under the fund 01.
Hold on a sec. Jeff, can you blow that up? I mean, or if you can get rid of the gutter on the side. I don't know if there's a way to do that in the new meeting management center.
That's why BYOT on my tablet.
Well, I think we're all going to be doing that with the new meeting management system. So that would probably be, we should probably start it now, but if there's a way to get rid of that gutter, that would be awesome.
So under the first section, under the general fund, we have $393,504 left in the ARPA fund. I know you can't see it, but if you scroll over to the ending balance, I know it's tiny there. There's still $60,000 left on the PO for JMT for the PROS plan. So this leaves us with a little over $333,000 that is allocated for the Gay Street project. And this is a little higher than our budget in 2025 of $262,000. The next thing I wanted to bring to your attention, just below that $393,000 number, is the $3,017,957. That's money that we have sitting in our general fund Pliget. That's where the majority of our interest earnings are coming from. That's money that we have been able to transfer over the past few years, and that's where how we're beating our interest targets. And then the last number I just wanted to point out is under Fund 18. If you can see that, it's one line above the last line on this report. The capital operating reserve is sitting at a little over $9 million as of 5/31, and year to date, the fund has earned $95,938 in interest. Moving over to page 3, please, the due tos and due froms. As of May 31st, the balance in these accounts is a little over $2,893,832. This is down from the April number of $943,861. So we were able to reconcile some of that interfund activity and transfer the money where we needed to. Moving over to page 4, please. Looking at the summary of results as of May 31st. The general fund on a cash basis is sitting at a net income of $5,080,860. And the enterprise funds are sitting at a net income cash basis of $1,723,119. Looking at the revenues on the general fund, business privilege, interest income, and prior year taxes are all beating budget. EIT is performing well. We did receive our first portion of the PHMIC refund. We booked a deposit of $145,704. So this leaves us with $54,000 left in that revenue line item that hopefully we will receive by the end of the year. In the housing department, their violations are beating budget, and in public works, street openings revenue is also beating budget. Looking at wastewater and parking, revenues are trending positively in those funds. And then on the expense side, there's no major line items that are overspent except for admin expense in housing and the administration department. In the housing department, this line item is overspent because of temporary staffing services that we are paying for the position that was open in 2025, but that position has become permanent as of this week. So we won't be booking that to that line item. And the reason why we put it there versus salary expense is because we're not paying FICA taxes on that, and it's just to make the reconciliations and the year end easier. And then in the administration expense, this line item is going to be over budget because of the HR consulting help that we're receiving over the next few months. And one final thing that I wanted to bring to your attention, at the back of this report in the check register, there were 6 checks that were made payable to the Borough of Westchester that totaled a little over $4.2 million. You can find these numbers on pages 29, 35, 37, and 38. These are checks that we made payable to the Borough of Westchester for principal and interest and money that we transferred to Pliget. 129,872.51 was written from the general fund Santander account and was deposited into the TD parking revenue fund. This is for the 515 interest expense that was due on the 2016 issuance in the general fund for stream protection, building, and the fire truck. And then we wrote a check for 130,522.25. This check was written from the parking Santander fund and was deposited into the parking TD fund. And this was for the parking funds principal and interest due on 515 for the 2016 refund of Chestnut Garage debt, the 2016 refund of 2010 debt, and the bicentennial garage. All debt payments are ACH'd out of the parking revenue, so we were just making those payments so that we could get the general fund portion and beef up the account for the other portion for parking. So as I said before, the remaining $4 million of that 4.2 was sent to the Pliget lockbox to be deposited in the general fund, sewer, parking, and stream protection to earn interest and meet our interest targets for 2025. And then I just wanted to give a quick update because I know there's been, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Can you remind me what Pliget means?
It's Pennsylvania Local Government Insurance Trust. It's a banking institution that we can use to, put funds and earn interest and better than what we're getting through our operating accounts.
Barb, what's that current interest rate we're getting? Do you know offhand from Pliget?
I think it's a little over 4 point something. I can get you a better.
Okay.
Probably better than money market.
No, money market's higher.
The,
Anyway.
We have it in term
that?
and CDs.
Sean?
Yeah, the rate we get is 4.35%. That's the
Okay.
current 7-day yield. And the lowest rate they're offering is 4.12. So they're in that
All right.
range of 4
Good.
and an eighth to 4.
Good, thank you.
And I just wanted to provide an update on the debt that is currently on the books because I know that there was talks with the new Public Works building. So currently, as of 5/31, we do have $18,654,000 in long-term debt. Of that amount, $11,500 is attributed to the parking fund, and the remaining is to the general fund. There's 3 debt issuances in the parking fund. $850,000 will be payable by 2027 and $10,650,000 by 2040. And then on the general fund, there's 4 issuances that make up that 7.1 number. The first payment will be relieved in 2029, 1 in 2034, and then 2 in 2037.
Barb, with that, and hypothetically speaking, if we went through with a new Public Works garage, could we refinance all of that debt?
I think that would be a strong possibility.
Okay,
I mean, we'd have to look into it, but that has happened in the past, so.
okay. Perfect, thank you for that. The other item here is, you mentioned we have 9 million in our reserve, right? I think that's more than we've had in the last couple of years. Do you know what we started, I guess I'm going to say like last year roughly what that balance was in the reserve?
It was probably somewhere in the range of $8 million.
Okay.
I don't have the exact number. I can get it.
No,
for you.
that's great. I think that shows the progress that we've made and the job that you and your team have done. So thank you for that.
Yep.
Is there any other questions here on the dais? Any public? Oh, go ahead.
Just a comment. Just a comment, because you mentioned specifically the building and housing violations were coming in above budget,
Mhm.
but last year they were below budget almost all year.
Yes.
Because of the situation with the department itself, would there have been a lot of change there. Is it on track for where it had been in prior years, or
It's actually doing better than it has.
doing better than it
been
has
several-
even in prior
yeah,
years?
in- for
With a
quite
lot
some
of that
time.
has to do with catch up too.
Yes.
So, okay, so it's not that had more violations, that we're just going through and we're catching up on what we missed last year.
Yeah.
Okay, that was it.
Yeah, yeah, I hope, I like to see more
I
money.
want to make money on
Yes,
violations.
right.
That's not the point, but we're out there doing it, and that's basically a sign of the work, and we're basically paying for the labor that we have to go out there and do the job. Okay, thank you.
One follow-up question with the numbers, and I think for the most part, they look pretty good. What would you say our biggest headwind is moving forward?
Biggest issues that we're facing. So if it was the world according to Barb, and I know a lot of people don't like to hear that, I like to make sure that, revenues are coming in and are meeting expense expectations. And I think it should be known that just because you have a line number in your budget does not mean that that can necessarily be spent unless money's coming in. So again, just the world according to me, if we all live that way. Obviously, I think debt is an issue. Just being able to pay those things. I know that there's been talk about funding the Gay Street project, and I just wanted to point those 3 items out, that those could be potential areas where we could find that funding. I just think, just keeping a good track, making sure we're doing reconciliations, making sure we're staying on top of things. And I think our department has been doing a good job with that. So
Thank
you
you.
may have more to add to that, but that's.
You really hit the big things. I think that we got a surprise when we opened that last bid for Gay Street. And so headwinds would be increasing costs for capital projects that we don't know until we get the bids back, and just being prepared for that. But we've also got tailwinds. We're earning a lot of interest because we've been able to save money, and we're making money in our capital operating reserve. And that's been a positive outcome the last at least 2.5 years. Is that right, Brian? Sort of when interest rates turned around?
Yeah, I would have to say when we made those recommendations to look at the Pliget Fund.
I think most forecasts are suggesting that interest rates are going to remain fairly similar to where we've been seeing. There is a forecast that says that U.S. economic growth is going to be split in half. That just was out there. I think Moody's put that out there. No, it was actually the World Bank. So at some point, the rate environment is going to turn favorable for people that are wanting to borrow money, and it will be unfavorable for us packing away money in safe, cash investments. We can't expect that to continue forever. But I think for at least the midterm, the short term, the midterm, we might be experiencing kind of the same environment, at least for a little bit. I think inflation came in better. That doesn't indicate that lowering interest rates by 0.5 points.
Well, the other option, and we discussed, and I think that you and your team have done this, is looking at CD rates
Yes.
and locking them in. So that was a really, really good move. And then maybe continue looking at these rates as well for future CD rates that may be yielding higher. So, yeah, no, thank you.
Yep.
All right, old business, approve the May 2025 meeting minutes. Any public comment? Any objections?
No.
Seeing none. Item B, discuss the 2025 Christmas parade. So there has been a discussion within the past month, I would have to say, and Barb, again?
So I just wanted to, what I believe my task was from last month was to kind of put together everything that has happened over the past few years with the Christmas parade, sort of summarize the decisions made by council and invoices that we billed out. And that's,
Is that microphone on? Here. This is what-
so this is what this spreadsheet is that you have.
She woke some people up.
You want me to be loud? Um, so this is what I had sent out to the committee yesterday is just sort of a summarization from 2018 through 2024. Again, of all the invoices that we sent out, the rates that were in place at that time, and decisions that were passed down through council. And as you can see, the invoiced amount that we sent out was a little over 36,651.16. Back in 2018, there was the garage fee was $10. In 2019, council's decision was to raise the fee by 5% above the prior year. 2020, there was no parade. Jeff, can you just scroll over just a little bit to the left so they can see? 2021, can you go the other way? Yeah, there you go. 2021, there was no parade. In 2022, there was a $20 parking garage fee as well as a 50% reduction on the borough staffing fees. In 2023, I was not able to find an official decision that was made by council. But when we did send out the invoice, we did go with the 2022 decision. And that's why you see that little variance there. And then in 2024, there was an approval for 50% reduction on the 2024 invoice. So I'll open it up for discussion from there.
And to the public, the reason why there was that reduction is because we adjusted fees late in the game and then was presented to the chamber late in the game. Okay. So with that, I know my colleagues have some opinions. There's public comment as well. So let's take some, if there's any public comment about the Christmas parade. Mayor, if you want to come up.
I'm happy to. So in 2024, the new special event fee was put in place and the invoice was a little over $16,000. And then the chamber came in 2025 and they were granted a 50% reduction on that bill. That's why you see the date that was approved was on February 19th, 2025, but that was for the 2024 invoice.
And the reason that we did that was because in the middle of the year, we changed and did the flat fees, the standardized fees. But it was later in the year that we approved it after the parade had already been, we'd never given them a forecasted estimated fee structure for 2024, right, wrong, or indifferent. It didn't happen. And so we changed the fees in the middle of the year last year to those flat rates. And when the team got the invoice, because we had not given them an estimate for 2024, it was a little bit of a sticker shock because they had based their planning on what we had charged them, the $8,000 in 2023. So we said, all right, fine. We did change all our fees in like September. We'll give you the 8,000, the 50% off rate for this year. We're going to talk about future years later, but we kind of all said, all right, let's just do this for this year. Understood that we made those changes kind of late in the game and they didn't have time to plan against them. So that's kind of where that happened. Whether, so that was the change. At the
No,
last,
that was
that was done
February.
last year. Or I guess it was early this year when we kind of,
Correct.
the change was done like in September, October, we changed our fees, right? And that was and then we gave them the invoice in like 2025, and then they came to us.
I can just add, if it helps too, that we received the invoice for the 2024 parade in January. And we had made, in addition to the event fees changing, I think the chamber made the assumption that that 50% reduction that we received in 22 and 23, and Barb had mentioned that there was no formal vote from council in 2023, we made the assumption that even with the event fees changing, that we were still going to receive that 50% reduction. So I think for us, that was what the surprise was on the bill. We were aware of the event fees changing. We thought that that 50% reduction was still going to stand. So that was what changed the invoice for us in terms of what we anticipated receiving, because I had shared with my board that I thought our bill would go up from 22 and 23. I anticipated a bill around $8,000, which is what we ended up paying. So we approached council in January or February and asked for the consideration because we weren't aware that that was going away. And then that was approved.
And this is something where we can all improve our processes. When there's any event, like we need to give estimates to people, like we need to work on some kind of estimate, because you should be working against some kind of estimate that we provide. Now, estimates are estimates, and like, as you know, in any project, costs can change.
Right.
But at least you have some kind of understanding, and we all are in the same ballpark, because right now we don't follow that process, and we would all benefit, not just Christmas parade, but all of our events, on having some kind of estimates provided to work towards and understand.
Right. Agreed.
Any other public comment?
Yeah, I mean, I can start. So, fairly staunch supporter of the Christmas parade and supporter of the chamber. Thank you for being here again tonight. I also am a huge supporter of all the events we have in town. I think it creates an environment that is not necessarily easily to duplicate in other towns. And quite frankly, just like Kennett, Phoenixville, those towns are growing, other neighbors, we're competing for people to come to our town. These events create a lot of vibrancy and, quite frankly, are a benefit to our residents. They also benefit to our businesses. I think we should offer, in some cases, when we're bringing lots of revenue in, we're giving people an experience and a reason to come into Westchester, not just for that event, but a reason to come back the next time, that we should be supporting the Christmas parade. We should be supporting some of the other local events that we do. That's my opinion. I see more benefit than I do cost. I thought what we could start with would be, for large events, and we provide services, some sort of a reduced cost for the event provider. My best, and to make it fair for everybody too, I thought that my idea was to throw out a number to start with and to start a conversation. So I started with 50%. We could reduce our services, most of which are police, followed by public works. And then there's some ancillary cones and things like that that we need to provide. But that we would start with a number that was 50%. So if your costs were $16,000, $18,000, somewhere roughly around that period, I think it floated around a little bit depending on what the size of it was. But we provide basically a savings of 50%, which is what we ended up doing this year. And if another event had good reason to ask for a 50% reduction in services because of all the benefits, it's also, the ancillary benefits that it provides to residents and businesses, that seemed fair. 50%, some of these events are self-funding and are money-making events that don't necessarily need the help because they can cover the costs. But if asked, that seemed to be a fair price. And we have been doing that over time, although it's not been as cut and dry as 50%. But along with that, I would also impose a cap. So we couldn't have like, a Woodstock 3-day event and say, okay, well, now our costs are, triple what we would normally pay for a 1-day event or a parade or something like that. We would put a cap in place. And I just, off the, just thought, it seemed like $5,000 was a fair cap for anybody that was going to be running up costs of $10,000, $15,000. And there are a couple reasons for that. One is to control the costs and the size of the event. But the other is we need some certainty too in terms of our costs to the borough and to the taxpayers of the borough. And it felt like that might be an even round, easily communicated number, 50%, and then a $5,000 cap. So that's where I was coming in. I know that there have been other discussions where, and maybe we can talk about those too, that weren't necessarily the same as that, but I thought that would be fair and it would also leave room for other events that weren't just the Christmas parade. So those are my comments.
My comments are slightly different from you. So I'm kind of, my whole thing is I want something standardized. My understanding is what we did last year was basically we were giving everybody a discount, but the thing is we had jacked up our prices. So what were we like, is that a perception of support? Did everybody prefer the perception of support? Because it seems like we're finding out that, yeah, the people did, because we kind of changed our pricing. If you think of like everyday value, like Macy's, right? Like 1998 was like a price of sleepwear when I used to work there, right? Everyday value. There was no discount, no 40% high low, right? Like that's kind of where I thought we landed last year. And so I find what you're kind of stating kind of takes us back to what we had been doing in a way, we lowered the prices in order to support everyone and make it better. So we weren't charging everybody so much and then having to negotiate these fees down because we were giving everyone the best price. So when you came to us, the thought was, okay, this is the Christmas parade. It's special. It's different. There's the attendance. Do you have any numbers on the attendance of the parade?
I typically, talk to the police department after the event, and they give us an estimate. I mean, I think in speaking with them at the end of last year, they estimated anywhere between 18 to 20,000.
Yeah, so that's a lot. Like that's way more than any other event that we have in town that brings people to town to enjoy that event. And so to me, I was like, all right, Christmas parade, very different. You guys put up the decorations that last throughout the winter, and that's also something that like beyond the day of the parade supports the entire look and feel of our community. And so I could totally get behind like having a conversation on the Christmas parade. What my biggest concern is getting back into what we just tried to stop doing last year, which was kind of creating this negotiation, like which event is more important than the other kind of conversation, right? And so I'm for doing something to support you guys based off the 18 to 20,000 people attending and all of the things that it brings to our local businesses and everything. I'm a little wary to open it up and like to do other fundraisers. Like, where do we stop? Uptown has a gala every year. Do we support Uptown's gala? My dog rescue had to run during this, like when we have small races in the street, do we like support every small race that everybody has on the weekend? Like where does that line draw? And I don't want to be in the business of trying to figure out a line to draw. So I want a solid process. I don't mind because there's such a large attendance way beyond any other event that we have here that I think we can get behind something, but I'm a little wary of opening it up. And
Yeah, I mean, the reason why. It would be one of the other pieces that I variable costs. Some of the rates. Members were. Still have a high fixed expenses.
Hmm.
So, one of the reasons why I was thinking that benefiting from sweaters.
Hmm.
And, you know, it's a restaurant that's probably a lot more parking spots than we will raise or something like that, obviously. But because we're bringing parking, that was the justification. There's, one is. I think we can also eliminate the variable costs component of it. Then you don't be surprised by it when you get something like that, and you know, you get half the revenue you expect.
Hmm.
So, some sort of fixed approach. And that's why I was moving 50% in our fixed costs.
Right.
So I understand both of your points, and I think to Ms. Shimoni, there has to be a standard because you need to know, like now, when to plan for everything, right?
Right.
You can't be going in to the fall thinking, what am I gonna? So, you know, we could issue a memorandum of understanding to the chamber. However, there would have to be language in there because it is a Westchester event in particular. And it has to be understood that this would be the event that we would be sponsoring solely. That's it. With that being said, there could be up to in-kind contributions that I would say from the police and public works, a total up to maybe 10,000. That would have to be reevaluated every 5 years when those contracts are up.
Mhm.
That way, you know, going into every year, what that number is. And I think it's a benefit for us because guess what? We have more important things to do than keep debating the Christmas parade. So I think that we should possibly discuss this further and put it on the consent agenda for next week. Hash out these ideas or put them on the
Work session, yeah.
agenda for next week. Hash out these ideas and get this done. How does that sound?
Well, how many different options do we have that we need to discuss during that?
Well, I
'Cause-
think one, we need a standard. Two, we're going to need a price. And three, we're going to need language to discuss, to Ms. Shimoni's point, that we can't be sponsoring everything underneath the sun.
Do we refer to this as a sponsorship?
That's something to be debated.
I can offer some resources. So at the same time that the chamber's having the conversations with council about the support, we're also working alongside of the police department on some emergency response plans for the chamber specifically, some other policy. So I'm doing a lot of research on parades all across the country right now. And I did find a really interesting document from Wilmington, North Carolina, and it was written by their community, by their borough, and it actually had in their event application, it was their process that an organization would have to go through in order to get an event permit. There was a whole section at the bottom on requesting support from that community in the same way that we're requesting the support. And there was a whole criteria of how you would determine if you could receive that support. So you had to fit into, you know, attendance obviously was part of it, how big the event was. And they did use some language in that about that the Wilmington would have to be recognized as a sponsor, and here's some of the criteria, you know, so it was all spelled out. I just actually stumbled upon it today when I was doing some research, so I'm happy to share it
I'd
to,
be
you know,
curious.
help with some guidance.
I think that would be great.
Yeah.
To that point, you know, reinventing the wheel, you know, it'd be nice to start with a wheel.
Right.
And to Councilwoman Shimoni's point, you know, the subjectivity in terms of deciding, you know what, if we had a rubric or some sort of criteria to follow,
Mhm.
even if it's not exactly what we would do, but if at least we had a starting point.
Yeah, you have some ideas in a template, and as I recognize, my board recognizes that we're asking you to, as Nicole was saying, you kind of came together and figured this all out last year, and now we're coming back and asking. I completely appreciate that. We're kind of asking you to come up with something different again, and I appreciate, council, having the conversations to see if we can get there. See if we can find a way to work together. So.
Yeah, we'll put this on the work session and then we'll
And I
have,
can,
and send that.
I'll
Send that
s-
document.
how would I send that? Do I
Send it,
send
if
it-
you want to send it to Sean.
Sean, and then you
we-
can
we'd have
distribute
to
it?
have the solicitor look
Okay.
at it.
Yeah,
Share
yeah.
it, Sean. All right, thank you, appreciate it.
Now, if we get to a point in the work session where we get to a standstill, we may need an extra month.
Yeah, and that's,
Find out, we'll see how it goes.
yeah, I mean, and honestly,
I'm
even
hoping
end
we
of
don't
summer
find
is helpful for us. We're going to be planning no matter what for what we would consider like worst case scenario. If we had the whole bill to pay, we have to be prepared that way. So we will be. And then if we can figure something out in the meantime, that would be great. Thank you.
Thanks.
So the spreadsheet that you have before you is the capital budget for the Parks and Recreation Department. There's two projects that they're looking to basically switch out. Horace Pippin is expected to come under budget, and Mr. Krowski would like to take the savings from that project and put it towards the John O'Green splash pad replacement because the quotes that he has gotten is expected to be higher than budget. So it's just basically a swap out between the two line items, and the bottom line of 448,500 won't change. If you have any questions for more details, I believe Keith is here and he can answer them.
I have just one question so are we saying that Horace Pippin is going to be $85,000 less than, no?
Sorry. Keith Krowski, Director of Parks and Rec. The Horace Pippin project, when we got the estimate 6-9 months ago, when we started working in the budget, I was planning on $85,000. When I presented 4 concepts to the Friends of Horace Pippin Park and the Rec Commission, one of the lower estimates was the one of their desire. So we're going to be saving money in that aspect,
How much?
about $20K.
We're going
So
to
that'll be now about $65,000 for Horace Pippin project.
Horace Pippin will be 65,000.
Correct.
Okay, so what's the 85,000 on this line here? Like, I thought this was a transfer of money, but maybe I'm reading it
No, I
wrong.
mean, it's the net sum at the end is remaining the same. The Horace Pippin project is coming in $20,000 under budget. So it's not going to be 85,000, it's going to be 65. The John O'Green project here listed at 65,000 is coming in over budget. Again, just like
All right,
the
so that's coming in at 85,000?
yes, 85,000 is what we would like to have allocated. So we're basically switching these two line items. It wasn't intended that way. It just kind of worked out that way. I'm not asking for any more funds.
Okay, I was confused because so the switch isn't actually on this chart.
Correct.
The switch is a $20,000, yeah.
Correct.
I'm not sure where the chart, but I feel like if there's something similar in the future, it might be helpful to have the amount on there, because I don't think the 20,000 is anywhere on this chart, because that's what got me confused. Is that something, Barb, that you would work on for the next, if this ever happens again? Okay, cool. All right, but so it's a $20,000 flip. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any public comment? Any objections?
Thank you.
All right, that motion has been approved. All right, motion to approve the following purchase requests here. Eagle Point gun, $18,000. That's for 9mm and ammunition. Marshall Square Park repairs, $980.32. That's due to, I believe there was an accident there and had to be repaired. Adorama, $21,136.35. That's drones for the police department. Motorola, $18,750. That's for cloud storage. Usalco, $12,835.20. Phosphorus removal and finally T2 Systems, $15,402. That's 4 handheld devices for the parking department. Okay, any public comment on any of those?
Chief here? Oh, sorry. Is the chief here?
I do not see him.
I just had a question about his drones, but I love the idea of the drones. I just wanted to see if it looked like there are 2 high-tech drones with night vision, thermal camera, 4K video, telephoto lens, stabilization, returned home. That all looks great. And then there looks like there's a third one that might be lower quality. And I just wanted to ask him some questions about that, but no objections. That's a
Perfect.
good idea.
Thank you. Any objections on the dais? Seeing none. Any other business?
Yeah,
Seeing,
yes, yes.
go ahead.
Okay. DCED fund, just want to bring it up. We were chatting about the Christmas parade and conversation came up and said something to Sean because we were like, oh yeah, whatever happened to that $200,000 that we lent to Uptown that they paid us back? And so asked Barb, we still have it in the budget in a line item somewhere in cash, right, Barb? But
It's in the general fund.
it's in the general fund, but we have opportunity to use that loan again. And so I think, Sean, you're pulling some stuff together and we're going to this is just something that, we should have on our radar and we should possibly talk about even in more detail next month. Like how do we use this fund? What should we be using it for? How do we make sure we don't lose sight of it? Because there was an intention, we got this grant for a reason. And so we just need to make sure that we know what we're doing with it.
You said loan at first, but I think what I heard was grant.
It was a grant
Okay.
to us that we loaned to Uptown and then Uptown paid us back with interest. And we got paid back, I don't know, a couple of years ago or something. When did we get paid back?
Like 2 years ago.
I think it was back in 2023.
Yeah, and I think Uptown started the grant, they did the application, but it had to come to us so we could loan it to them. And then, but now we have that money that could be available to other entities in the borough when they're doing projects or something like that. If we wanted to loan it, it's a loan or,
Thank you. Certainly, maybe we could discuss that at next month's finance meeting. Any other business? Seeing none, we are adjourned at 6:13.